The texts that I chose to examine for my project were Marilyn Monroe, A Woman Who Died Too Soon by Gloria Steinem, A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams, and Cinderella by Charles Perrault. So my thesis is each text examines how beautiful women are portrayed as sex symbols, giving off the message that a woman's life can only be completely fulfilled with a male figure due to their lack of power. This is demonstrated through inequality in gender roles, dependency on men and masculinity, and how women's values are imposed upon them by men. So my first point is women are not seen as equal in comparison to men because of how they are portrayed as sex symbols due to their lack of power. So Marilyn Monroe would be the first example of this because her colleagues did not take her seriously. She went to an actor's studio where she was only allowed to observe her colleagues instead of actually participate with them. And this was because of the fact that she was a woman, and so they looked down upon her, and they kind of got a sense of power from that because each interaction that they had with her were very cold and casual, and they kind of just brushed her off. So Marilyn began to wear these black big sweaters and pants because she was now trying to cover up her body in the hopes of gaining that respect that she was looking for. However, that didn't work because they still just ignored her, and they still never let her do the scenes with them. And so it kind of shows that how when she was starting to wear different clothes, how she almost feels like she has to apologize for who she is, even though she's not doing anything wrong. And so another example of that would be Blanche. Blanche's sexuality is seen as a weakness, especially when Mitch finds out about her past. He's very quick to not want to be with her anymore. And so it just shows how Blanche, being as beautiful as she isn't able to be taken seriously either because her sexuality is seen as a weakness, as it is asserted on other men. To men that don't know her, it might be appealing, but as soon as they figure out what she's really about, they are very quick to not want to be with her anymore. And then another example of this would be Cinderella. So Cinderella marries the prince without knowing him. So this kind of shows how you need a man to be fulfilled. Cinderella after the ball loses her glass slipper, and so the prince is running around everywhere trying to find the beautiful woman that he saw at the ball to return it to. He eventually tracks Cinderella down and then immediately asks her to marry him. She immediately says yes, agreeing to marry a man that she only met once. She does this though because he's the first man that's ever showed her any affection or attention, and she's not really used to that, but she really likes it, so she's very quick to kind of want to be with him. But it just shows how he's the only one that can provide that for her, another woman or even herself couldn't. And so it just shows how all three women are very not treated with equality because of the way that they look. And so my next point would be dependency on masculinity is a result of how one can only be fulfilled with the company of another man. And so this is first shown through Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was very dependent on a husband to feel fulfilled. She was married 3 times. She was first married at a very young age of 16. She married a factory worker. And then she married Joe DiMaggio, and then again she married Arthur Miller. And so it just shows how she always needed a man to feel complete. She was very dependent on them for security because she could never depend on the women in her life to protect her. And so it just shows how she always needed that. And another example of this would be how Blanche looks to Mitch for happiness and love. And then she does this because she can't provide the happiness and love that she's looking for herself. And even though Mitch isn't like the richest man, she also kind of looks to him for wealth because she hopes that like Mitch can help her kind of get over her past. But when he finds out about her reputation, he doesn't want to be with her anymore, and so she's very quick to jump on to the next person, which would be Shep. She looks to Shep the millionaire from Dallas to now give her support. And so it just shows how like she always needs a man to depend on and to provide for her. And so another example of this would be Cinderella, and how Cinderella is dependent on the prince. She's dependent on the prince because she looks to him kind of because she wants to get away from her evil stepmother and her rude stepsisters, but she can't find the means to like stand up to them on her own. And so when the prince comes along, she kind of depends on him to help her out. And it just shows how like she can't really do anything for herself in any situation, and how she kind of needs that reliance of him. And my other point is women's values are imposed upon them by men out of the need to look physically appealing for them. So Marilyn Monroe was married to Arthur Miller, and he would cast women other than his middle-aged wife that were far more younger and glamorous. And he did this because he thought that they would give off like a better image. And so she left him and agreed that she would never ever work in films with him again because of his like subversive ways. And so it kind of shows how she had good values from that, because she realized that like sexual association doesn't get like you any further than hard work does. And so she decided to like stop asserting her sexuality just to get success. And so another example of this would be Blanche. She kind of would assert her sexuality as well towards men, because she was an aging belle, kind of, and she didn't want her beauty like to go away. And so she would kind of always be very sexual, and like she had sexual desires from the past anyways, but it kind of like they were imposed upon her because she felt like she needed to look a certain way to get the attention of men, and like that was the only way that she would be able to. And so this is also seen through Cinderella's transformation to look physically appealing for the prince. She changes her whole appearance from like her raggedy clothes into like gold and silver. And this is showing how Cinderella kind of needs to look a certain way for the prince. Like as soon as she's transformed, he immediately like becomes very like protective over her, and he doesn't want anyone else looking at her, even though she gains the attention of everyone else when she walks into the ball. So it just shows how like she felt the need to look a certain way. Like the prince had such a strong influence over Cinderella's decision to change her whole appearance. And so like in conclusion, like it just shows how each text kind of analyzes how beautiful women are portrayed as sex symbols, giving off the message that a woman's life can only be satisfied with a male figure due to their lack of power. And this is proven through inequality in gender roles, dependency on men and masculinity, and how women's values are imposed upon them by men.